Welcome to Shareholders of a Better World, brought to you by TBLI Group. At TBLI Group, we have an established reputation as an organization dedicated to building the ecosystem of global sustainability and impact investing. We're doing this through educating, advising, and facilitating transactions in global sustainability and impact business, as well as capital solutions for private companies, family offices, and fund groups. For nearly 25 years, TBLI Group has created a vertically integrated ecosystem of education to action through TBLI conferences and TBLI consulting. More about our company can be found at tbligroup.com. This webinar is brought to you by TBLI Foundation, which hosts educational learning experiences dedicated to a better planet. Through the foundation, we build sustainable communities by sharing the people and the experiences making a difference to so many of our lives around the world. Our weekly podcasts bring impact thought leaders that are doing and not only chatting. Now let me introduce my guest today. Good evening from our studio in Amsterdam. I want to greet everyone before I introduce our special guest this evening. So thank you all for coming. For those of you who are not familiar with the system, if you have a question or a comment, just type it in the lower right-hand corner, and I will get to that after Wayne speaks. And if you want to send a private message to someone in the chat area, just move your mouse over their name, over their photo, and a window will pop up, and you can send them a direct message. And if you're really ambitious, you can ask to grab the mic to join the podium. So I'm really honored today because we have really one of the true pioneers. I mean, in 1976, he started Calvert, at least according to Wikipedia. And they were the first ESG fund manager in the United States. And I'm honored. He's a dear friend and a true pioneer. And for those of you who, what were you doing in 1976, particularly as it relates to ESG or impact? That was a long time ago. That had great foresight. And he had done many, many other things, which we'll get to. So for those of you who live on a strange planet and you never heard of Wayne Silby, I'm going to let Wayne give you a bit of his background and his journey. So Wayne, thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it very much.
Sure, Robert. It's a real pleasure to be here. And, so many years later and reflecting. In fact, we actually started Calvert Social Investment Fund in 82. 76, I'd graduated from Wharton Law School and wanted to make some money and be like one of those. And we started one of the very early money funds, and we're actually number one in the country for years and years. But I want to tell a story. So what happened is I saw this ad for this place called Another Place up in New Hampshire, which was kind of a post-hippie farm. Like, what do we do after those of us who went to college in the 60s, that generation? Like, what's life about now? And this was a conference on right livelihood. Right livelihood is one of the eightfold path in Buddhism on enlightenment. It's about how do you lead your life consistent with your values? So there I am in this group that I really resonated with in terms of my generation, and I was in my 20s. And like, well, gee, I'm like, on my tombstone at the moment, I'm like, gee, I got 20 basis points more than the next guy, was kind of my life story. I mean, that's what we were outperforming and whatever. And it really caused me to think more and more about, what is on the tombstone, or what is what are you really doing here? And the idea of then integrating kind of my generation's values into the investment process is what allowed us to create Calvert Social Investment Fund. And though I was chairman and, funding and so on, I will say that all these amazing people showed up for this journey, like Emery Levins, the Energy Guide, or Hazel Henderson, or Robert Rodale, the Rodale Press with Mark Sarkady. So it takes a village, as they say. And of course, in those days, we had, well, I mean, people didn't know much about the idea of combining values and investments. And people would look at me like, Wayne, are you still on LSD or what's going on there? Because it was certainly, it's hard to express to a lot of the millennials right now where this ESG has caught a fad kind of quality and become like, how did that phenomenon where you had kind of a vision, you had some other people join in, you joined with others, and how did that become like today? Even a Blackstone partner told me it's hard to raise money unless they talk sustainability. I mean, the world has changed. I remember just a few years ago, I was on Australian television being interviewed, and the person said, well, how do you get people, especially a lot of these brokers are kind of conservative, and this industry, how do you? And I swear, Robert, in terms of building kind of a movement, and the millennials and other people starting to say, you know, what is the purpose of investments and what are we trying to do here? You know, this does make sense. You're not a communist. And I said to the woman, well, it was really hard in the old days to convince people to join in on this movement. But these days I say to them, I have a question for you. You want clients or you don't want clients? So the world has changed, Robert. So thank you for letting me intro that. I will say that Calvert, maybe because we were young and I never had a job before, we did a lot of some of the originals in terms of setting aside a certain amount of money, 1% for below market returns. The SEC had never seen that in a registered investment fund before, to further issues of social justice. And also we set aside a little bit for impact for venture capital, social venture capital kinds of work, as well as our screening and our companies. Yeah, I remember the days when I remember people in our social research department were like, gee, these computers, you know, I got to get a new one, but what do I do with the old one? And, you know, gee, and they got this idea that we should go to Dell Computer, do a shareholder resolution and say, hey, what happens to the computers after we sell them? What kind of environmental issue is this? So this is, you know, so our lawyers, their lawyers, SEC, when you're filing shareholder resolutions, there's like, well, anyway, Michael Dell himself heard about this and had the Calvert people come into his office. And after the conversation, he's like, actually, this is a good idea. So because of Calvert owning the shares, and us just asking some fundamental questions, this started the first post-consumer waste in the computer industry. And then once Dell had to do it, compact, everyone got into that. And it's kind of a way that one of our successes, and as well as others, kind of championing the companies and not being a, kind of an outside activist harassing them, but gee, what are we doing in this department? So it's been a long journey, it's evolved to the extent now. I think, you and I talked the other day about some greenwashing and that kind of thing. Sometimes I give talks on this ESG and so on, and even though it's a little compliance oriented, I really go back to, don't pick up your pencils and more like, ask yourself, what kind of world do you want to create? How do you want to participate in that? How should your investments conform to that? It's more like a values question. And sometimes these days, ESG has become like the compliance, the carbon. These are all good policy. They're all, but still, there needs to be more of more of a proactive quality of wanting to participate in building this better world, because it both gives you energy and it's fun and wonderful instead of a compliance angle. But I'm sure people, have some questions or want to go in various directions, I'm happy to do that, Robert.
You pivoted to China a while ago. I mean, you were early when you pivoted there, and you helped set up the China Sintao, which also created the China Social Investment Forum and created that ecosystem. And you're still very active. And actually, we were chatting, and you're actually quite positive about China and this new initiative about common prosperity.
Well, and some of your people have a reaction. So I set up a couple companies there about 15 years ago. I set up a company doing corporate social responsibility. We were some of the first. We had invested in the China Environment Fund, and people said, Wayne, the Chinese, they don't care about the environment. You're going to lose all your money. We actually doubled our money. It became a go-to clean tech fund. And then I met a very talented young fellow named Gopei Wong, and we decided to do this corporate social responsibility consulting. China Mobile was one of our customers, the largest cell phone company in the world. And how do you work with, those kind of values in that context? And I will say that, sometimes it's been hit or miss in China. But lately, there's been this common prosperity theme by Xi Jinping. In fact, it's an interesting aspect because to me, and I think the Chinese companies have it wrong. It's not about donating to the Red Cross or it's more about using your value proposition to leverage your values. And this goes into, Robert, this kind of being more proactive. I've been thinking about writing an article could common prosperity be the next step beyond ESG? And common prosperity, for those of you, is Xi Jinping's. He wants the entrepreneurs to participate more in the social welfare of the society and not just be, money makers. And I think that if people actually become more creative and innovative and think about their infrastructure and their value proposition, you could actually go a little out of your way and do some wonderful things in terms of social payoff. I mean, I'll use a couple examples in the US. I mean, we have Amazon. If you're on food stamps, you get Amazon Prime at half price. And it probably costs them very little, or it's just something they can do. They don't make money from it, but at the same time, why not? Salesforce, they give out their software to nonprofits at half price. I mean, there are ways that so many companies have a value prop. Well, even Calvert, we had the opportunity, okay, we could donate $100,000 to the Red Cross or something, or we could take that money and say, we already have the 800 numbers, the lawyers, we have investment expertise. Maybe we should create a nonprofit where the investments are below rate that go real for community impact and finance these community loan funds, and maybe people would like to participate in that. And so for not that much money, and then some other foundations, Ford MacArthur and others, lent us some subordinated debt, which we paid back, to actually show the model could work, and then more people got attracted. And now Calvert Impact Capital, I don't know, we're $700-800 million. We've made billions of dollars in loan between microfinance. We've acted as an example. We did the first environmental bond. And again, it's, a lot of this is not me. I'm kind of more social vision, whatever. And we have these just amazing, wonderful people that are able to execute on, making these loans, and we haven't lost anybody's money. In fact, during the financial crisis, Citibank came to us, asked us if we could invest $200 million on their behalf. We were able to take over 100. And again, being part of the community, understanding real community needs. It takes a little more committee meetings. Yes, the investment decisions are a little bit longer and a little more due diligence and exactly how did that work. But as I say, we haven't lost anybody's money. I mean, we lost a few dollars of our own, but the point is that we could have donated to the Red Cross. Or, gee, we built this $700 million nonprofit facility funding the underserved for the same amount of money. And it's, again, we leverage our infrastructure, our expertise, to some extent, our reputation and our brand as well. So that's where I feel like some of the excitement is. And I'm sure some of your people are like, what? China informing ESG? That may not go down well because obviously, there are control issues and this and that are legitimate. However, I do think that this common prosperity, I mean, this could be stretching it, but even Tesla, you want to sell cars in China? Well, where's your subcommittee on the board on common prosperity? And Musk just the other day was on a internet conference where Xi Jinping also spoke and kind of made allusions to something like that. So who knows? Maybe someday all corporations will have this CSR committee or common prosperity committee, whatever, that shows how, again, I'm a venture capitalist, or have been. I mean, investor, Warden. I mean, I like to make money and so on. But gee, to be able to go a little out of your way and have some extra time and, some innovation, some creativity, to be able to take what you already have and, okay, it might cost a few dollars, but the social impact can be so large. I just don't know what's not to like about that as a way for us to take ESG from kind of the compliance sort of mentality into a proactive, well, what can you do for the society? And not from a tax kind of thing or, a burden kind of thing, but gee, let's have people enjoy using their value proposition and serving the underserved, which eventually serves us all.
One of your buddies wanted to say hello. Hazel Henderson. Hazel is her screen is going to be joining. I hope she's still there because she grabbed the mic a while ago. So I hope that she's still around. If not, she can always come back. But just Hazel, if you want to grab the mic again, I'll let you in. But you're there we go. Okay, here we go. That. Okay.
Just to also introduce Hazel Henderson, who, oh my God, well, she's like an icon in the for those of us old enough to. And one obvious question is, well, our GDP, our growth, our stocks, our investment, how does this all relate? And so we did the Calvert Henderson indicators. Mm-hmm. And I know your wife did something in Bhutan, whatever. And the point is, what is the quality of life we're living? Not about our GDP output, which includes pollution and that kind of thing. So Hazel, take it away.
Yeah, but I think she was, there, she's back. Hazel, just press to grab the mic. There you go. Now I'm going to let you in. And you just have to let the system let you in. Hopefully your camera will be working. No, I don't. It's because I always lose you. I think you're going to need some help from your colleague over there, Hazel, because I'm letting you in, but your system is either blocking it or not. But I want to get back to all of the efforts that you're doing in China. You spend quite a bit of time there. You started a Buddhist space. You supported a for-profit Sintao to create this advisory service in sustainability. But it's also taken a while. Do you also see this kind of rush towards sustainability, that they've seen the limits to how much we can pollute, or is it just that we don't really care as long as we can make money?
No, this is where China, being a command and control society on some level, and potentially becoming too much so, depending on. But they've supported CSR kind of, from 15 years ago, And now in terms of carbon and the pledge, what is it, 2060 to be carbon neutral, and some of the conversations, the Chinese, when they get it down, their execution is pretty good. So Sintao and again, our little company Moody's came and invested in our subsidiary on a green bond subsidiary, and we're like 80 people now in 4 or 5 offices, and we're actually pretty busy, and which is hard because we need to get more into strategic, this next step, which potentially could be working with this common prosperity concept, and how can companies work with that, and not by donating, but by using their infrastructure, being a little creative, their value proposition, where they could help the society because of who they are. I mean, giving yourself really is the best kind of sharing, and so potentially us working with identifying some of those possibilities with companies has been something we're internally discussing. But my other activity is trying to create a little more mindfulness. And I'm not a big meditator as such, and if I make it into a business, Robert, I get serious about it. And so I created a company called ZenFlow, and we actually make flotation tanks, and we have people can float, and we work and we do some podcasts and work with a little meditation and do some other kinds of activities related to this thing about people, the Maslow needs and self-actualization. I feel that this is something where the Chinese government policymakers have not yet engaged. We work with a guy, Shenzhen Young, a bit, who wrote a book, The Science of Enlightenment, because the Chinese are not into they're not even, the party is not even into Buddhism, is kind of, you're not supposed to do much of that. However, a science-based, stress-based, science-based, mindfulness-based stress reduction, those kinds of activities are welcome if you can show the science behind it. And so we've been the science based, and we've also been engaging with technologies or searching for technologies that can further help this sense of equanimity or mindfulness, so you don't have to go off and meditate for 10 years in Tibet or something. And actually, I've got involved with the University of Arizona in a technology called focused ultrasound, where essentially sound waves focused in various parts of the brain. And this is all these neuroscience. This is one of the more exciting fields in neuroscience I'm interested in the mindfulness aspect, but people, are spending millions and millions of dollars in depression and anxiety and other indications. In fact, I have an early essential tremor, my hand shakes, and the only application right now for focused ultrasound is essential tremor, where you go in an MRI machine and they spot that part of your brain. And again, this is non-invasive and stimulate it, and you can come out and write your hand, and you couldn't hold a glass of water before you went in. So this whole area of neuroscience, and there are a lot of ethical issues around that. What is happiness, focus, how they're a little above my pay grade, but being around some of the scientists and others at the university, and that isn't just there. I mean, it's a phenomenon going on in other labs around the world, but it's very exciting because wellness is such an issue. About a few years ago, I was invited by Temasek, which is the second largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. They wanted me to give them thoughts on investments in the future.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, and they told me whatever. So I'm there, but when I arrive, they had this guy who was a handler, my handler, to go over what am I going to say, blah blah. And I tend to, you know me, Robert, I tend to say whatever I
of course
want to say. And this guy was totally, and he asked me what I'm going to say. I said, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about the suicide rates. I'm going to talk about wellness, mental wellness. We've got a mental health crisis, and the future and the opportunity, and this is, I don't know, this is 3-4 years ago, I think is being able to manage our ability to, see and be in the world in a way with these mental health issues, so which of course related are integrated to your mind, body, health, nutrition, everything else. And this guy was livid. Like, Wayne, we just want to hear about climate change. Don't do that, man. Because this is the hot topic. And Temasek is like $500 billion. They fund the venture capital funds in Silicon Valley. So their orders. I was with this guy from Mayfield, Tim Chang, and just before I left for Singapore, he said, Wayne, we take orders from them, and if you can get them to move more into this wellness, we'd love to do it. But my point is, again, so I did my wellness talk. I touched on some climate and this and that, and the CEO finished up, and these were, big executives from the Singapore Society. It was their Ecotopia week. Yeah. Anyway, this guy, a year and a half later, from, quite honestly, World WRI, he wrote me this email, which really made my day, and said, Wayne, I'm not going to say my words, but I've come to understand that if we don't treat ourselves well, how are we going to treat the planet well? Mm-hmm. And I see now what you were talking about in terms of mindfulness and consciousness. And I think, even, Tim Cook made a speech a year or so ago, and he said, 20 years from now, when people look back on Apple Computer, I hope they say, wow, what a great healthcare company. Mm-hmm. It's just so much is going into how we experience and interact with the world. And there are a lot of design, ethical issues. I was with someone who was part of this Facebook, I don't want to say scandal, but that social, the Netflix social dilemma video, which is the most seen documentary on Netflix, talking about the dopamine levels. And anyway, she was staying. I sold my Facebook stock. Calvert never bought the Facebook. But my point is that there are ways that our future is being determined in terms of our politics as well, that appeal to kind of our baser instincts, our emotions, to get us to be addicted. The more we're addicted to Facebook, the more they can sell the ads and the more money they make. It's like, to what extent, do we need to rethink about this? So as Facebook shareholders, or as, climate's been the hot one, but I think this mental wellness and how do we think and how do we, so much of our society really doesn't have the cognitive tools to, this whole vaccine issue and a lot of it is, and I guess Facebook now, or no, that's Google now, just eliminated all anti-vaccine commentary. They just made that announcement. And my point is that we need to understand how our own psychology, our own our neuroscience, how we get modulated into ways of being and behaving. And I feel like really we have a lot of mental health problems in this country, and we've seen that in COVID, the murders. In fact, more people died of overdose of drugs in San Francisco than they died of COVID last year. People don't, there's a lot of whatever. And some of us don't travel in those circles where there is these issues. And then, a lot of these young kids who are born to single parent families, in terms of, those opportunities there to be in charge of their own emotion, learn to breathe at the right time, and so I feel like in terms of the impact investing space, I certainly, I usually don't get where the parade is going and try to look at other areas that seem interesting and then try to suggest to those pulling the trigger that, gee, maybe, maybe more in this wellness space and that kind of thing. So that's brings you much up to date with what I've been involved with lately.
Wouldn't because you've been focusing on China, wouldn't it be more effective of focusing wellness in North America or in the US rather than in China?
Well, I mean, the Americans are like, weren't they popular in the 2020s? I mean, 1.4 billion people who, are smarter than Americans. The average Chinese is, the average Asian in America makes more money than the average white guy. And I'm just saying, and then they go by policy. I mean, we're like, they have this video in Beijing or in China television, like how Xi Jinping came to power and all the political things he had to do in those cities and mayor and blah, blah, blah. And then Donald Trump, like, whoop, you got this guy who just was a real estate developer and whatever. But the problem is in our society, we're fighting over abortion, and China's designing the new crypto. It's the new digital yuan, which would allow them to know everything you buy and sell and where you get your money and where you send it, all go through the government filters. And they've already launched this program. And I can promise you they're going to get, Africa and South America, they're going to get other countries. The Chinese have a good way of translating economic power into political power. And I was in the room a couple years ago, Larry Summers, and chairman of on their state grounds where they were announcing this effort 2.5 years ago. And honestly, there's a lot of jealousy about the American dollar being the reserve currency. And I'm telling you, the Chinese, they don't get like, why should the American dollar? I mean, we're seeing that manifest. The markets in the last couple of days had a big kind of hiccup on a resetting, and all the news you read doesn't talk about how the Yi Gang, chairman of the People's Bank of China, the central bank, made an announcement like Monday, just cautioning that this quantitative easing might have gone too far and there are risks to it and that kind of thing. And I don't know if that was in conjunction with them meeting with other banks, but basically the imperial court has said, enough of this easing. And, we're Eurocentric, American-centric, and whatever they think. But whatever they think, they have their problems. But China, to answer your question, China and how the young people experience transformation. In Silicon Valley, you have all this microdosing. You have people like being creative and innovative. You got a freedom of mind, a roaming. And in China, it's a lot more control. And I feel like they're the old people, the Xi Jinping, like kind of your father's communist. And then you have the young people who really, I feel I got to know pretty well. And they, what are their higher needs in terms of like Maslow, or what are their aspirations? And, they don't, people want to do self-actualization and mind and, some of the meditation and realizing that you are not your mind chatter, that you have a deeper self and being more in touch with that instead of the mind chatter that, comes from some of your childhood trauma or informed different ways. And I'm not talking about seriously neurotic people. I mean, I'm sure I'm a little neurotic, so I appreciate it a bit. But I am talking about a people coming into power, hypersonic. I mean, and believe me, they're trading, they're the largest trading partner with almost every country on the planet. And being able to introduce to them, some of the transformational concepts that really come from, you can't say Buddhism, but from just being in touch with one's true self and your own values instead of what's dictated to you. One of the things that bother me sometimes about China is they always, like, there's the guy on the stage and then you in the room, and there isn't this, collaboration and, little breakout circles and what do you think? And we need to encourage that if there's going to be, world peace and coevolution and that kind of thing, because the Chinese are definitely, in terms of their policy making, they don't always get it right the first time, but there's a there. It's kind of like if you had a battlefield and the Americans send out their people like Free Market, like just do whatever you think, and the Chinese have a well planned out how you do this and that. And I feel so I feel like us providing some of that transformational energy in China using traditional concepts of mindfulness-based stress reduction and that kind of thing is, China is pivotal. I mean, people didn't even talk about it 15, 20 years ago. People want to know why I was going there, and people thought Hong Kong was China. And then you run into people who told me, Wayne, someday you're going to see Hong Kong as a pimple on the butt of China. And here we are today. So I love being an American. I'm very, God bless, that kind of thing. But I just believe that sharing, this is really important. They're trying to do social stability in a way that, to me, I think the Chinese people don't need as much social control as the party believes, but who knows? On the other hand, they probably need a little more in whatever. They're not used anyway. Thank you.
Well, it's funny that you were mentioning that, because actually we get a lot of people knocking on our door who basically want to fill up their wheelbarrow of stuff and not leave any crumbs for anyone. But in China, we were getting quite a few requests from new initiatives of Next Gen.
Right, Next Gen.
And they weren't looking for deals, how can they become more rich? They were looking, how do I engage with my counterpart in the West? How do I meet them and learn from them about sustainable investment? I'd like to learn more. And they were also, I was surprised because they were very respectful to me because I had put in so many years, and that meant a lot, to them. Whereas, in the West, what can I get out of you quickly? And it's all transactional. And there it was, I was very surprised about that, because it didn't happen like once, it was like 2 or 3 times. Initiatives from next gen organizations, sometimes well-funded, sometimes an initiative of we would like to engage more with our counterparts in the West, but we don't know where to go and know what to do. And we do want to. So I think that you're right. You have the old communists that want to keep on control and power, but what the next gen are going to do,
right.
They seem to have a different agenda, at least the ones that I've met.
No, I believe they do. I mean, there are a lot of party members who don't like what's going on, but they're not going to say anything. However, the young people, they keep their heads down and bide their time, and that used to be a big slogan for China in terms of how it emerged in the world. And that no longer is applicable. So I think the next gen is it isn't just next gen, it's millennials all over the world really are like, gee, this place, I mean, what? And I mean, I thought I was part of a good generation, but we live for free and these people have to pay all these, there's just a lot of generational unfairness or inequality that has occurred. And I think that in terms of pro-action, I think it's still in the wondering stage because they don't have that power yet. Now, I will say 25 years ago, I was a co-founder of something called Social Venture Circle, Social Venture Network, and it was quite, me and this other guy, and let's get entrepreneurs together. And this is in the late 80s, and talk about, this is an erotic body shop, Ben & Jerry, kind of like, gee, what kind of world? I mean, you did not have those conversations at, the Chamber of Commerce or the, whatever. This was like your new, and the thing is, we sort of built this group, which is still going on today, that asks these fundamental questions, although in those days it was so new. Now it's become, we helped start BSR, Business for Social Responsibility, whatever. My point, however, is that about 15, 20, I was like, gee, maybe I should introduce, we should do something with China, because we did something with Europe, as you know, in terms of partnered with that, and some things in Latin America and a little bit Southeast Asia, but China. But in those days when I had more energy, the Chinese were still like making money and being entrepreneurs there. I'll tell you, China, it's tough being business is challenging there. In fact, these crackdowns on Tencent, on Alibaba, and some of these other Chinese entrepreneurs can be ruthless, actually. So, actually, the Chinese government has some good points in stopping some of this monopolistic competition, which really prevented other innovations and others from emerging. And a lot of us don't like certain things, policies China has. However, let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater, because with regard to some of these, antitrust concepts, the common prosperity thing, this isn't a wish list. This is a command list, and you're going to get the memo. Jack Ma, the richest person in the world, must have, taken a month or 6 weeks off, because he disappeared while he was reading the memo at the request of the party. So my point is that China has oftentimes been copied to China, has been their business model, and copied, blah, blah. But some of this social innovation stuff, some of these initiatives, again, I don't like some of the control aspects, but even the Ant Financial thing was, Ant Financial wanted like a 2% reserve. That's crazy. Most of the time, a 2% reserve, but every 10 or 15 years, you have some financial crisis. And if that the government had a lot of good points as to why that Ant Financial should be questioned. So, yes, we've had people to our float center, including the woman who runs the most influential, kind of the Wall Street Journal type of thing in China, or the senior economist or the chief economist, the People's Bank of China. And, it's just interesting how that society has evolved, and the people they've taken out of poverty. And there are a lot of problems, but I think that how they get into tune with being proactive on these transformational issues. Otherwise, China, if you don't have something to live for that's beyond, you might just have one child, or you might have a society that, what is the meaning of life? These things we've talked about and we've explored, and they want to explore too, but right now there's not that facility or opening in the same way. And again, you could refer to Buddhism, but the party is pretty anti-Buddhist. So this this I think creates an opportunity for how is the evolution going to happen in China with regard to, you know, the best and the brightest and the thinking that's inclusive and win-win and all those ideas. So I may be getting off the impact investing track, except that the next gen are the people who are looking at this, because traditionally, you know, Chinese, even charity was not a real word, and the idea of paying it forward and even win-win, I think they kind of appropriated from the Western lexicon. And so, and you know, there's this nationalist thing going on, and no, this is big questions of our time. Is how is China emerging on the stage in a way that you know, we can all both live together and prosper, and you know, they have this social stability concern that I think they have control issues. What can I say that are going to affect us? I mean, Hollywood today. If people knew how Hollywood is, you know, they've remade movies where they were going to have Chinese adversaries, and they got the memo. If you ever wanted, if your director ever again wants to be part of a movie that gets any exposure in China, I mean, they know how to. So they know how to, you know, make their influence.
Hazel has made it. She's grabbed the mic. So Hazel,
All right.
platform. Okay.
Hi. Hi. Yes. I don't know whether you can see me, but I can see you. That's the main thing. And Wayne, I just wanted to tell you that I totally agree with you about what's happening in China. And as you know, I've been going to China since 1986. And I think that this is a very good sort of balance wheel to the kind of capitalism that we've let run wild in the USA, you know. So I think it's fascinating, and that we should really, as a matter of fact, I'll send you an article I did on this whole thing, you know, and maybe
on the common prosperity.
Yeah. So maybe we can chat on offline. Okay, I'll give you a call.
Very good, dear.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Hazel.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I'm going to take some questions because we're coming close to the hour. Beata wanted to know, what do you think that the next 50 years in impact investing is going to look like? And if you could start all over again with no money, where would you start?
Well, you know, again, see, this is a good question, because what stopped a lot of impact investing, I think, was you get these MBAs who want to know, what is the monetization? What is the business model? How do we blah, blah, blah? And in my life, well, even Calvert Social Investment Fund, we already had these other funds and we could support. It was kind of like, let another 100 flowers bloom. Let's try something good. And let's not worry about the business model. Let's not worry how we're going to make money off this. And I could point to example after example where just doing the right thing all at once, you start to see how actually there are opportunities to make it viable, commercially viable. And well, even the theme itself of a social investment fund or an ESG. I mean, look, when they came in to value Calvert, they said, your people are more sticky, you have more vision, and, you know, for your assets, you're worth more than these other guys who are just like, how much money can you make, whatever. And my point is that in terms of starting, like, what are true societal needs that need to be met, and being able to address those needs without immediately stopping yourself with some kind of business model mentality, which it's hard. It's hard because you know, we're all taught that, and so I would say looking around for true social needs, getting oneself a little bit involved in that if you can, you know, afford that, And to me, a lot of wellness. You know, what I think is going to happen is we have a lot of underprivileged kids who, I mean, you know, we have more people in prison in America we have 2 million people in prison than any other country per capita. And, you know, we have I don't know if you call it underclass or whatever, discriminate or whatever. But the point is, I think that it's like the biggest social bond, and if we can get these folks more stable and more productive and not living in households where there's either not enough to eat or the mother's got one, you know, there's not a father. I mean, if we can help that, the benefits to the society are incredible. And I guess, you know, part of this whole healthcare bill, right, or the whole thing in Congress today around child care, child support, those kinds of things are now in the policymakers' minds. So what I think is that this way to get really the society, we really can't afford poor people. They cost too much. Really, they do. So if we can help work with them, and you know, I just feel like there are opportunities in that area, and a lot of that is stress reduction, emotional balance. You know, that marshmallow test about the future, and do you trust that there is going to be a future? Someone's going to come back in the room and give you 2 marshmallows. Well, there are a lot of kids who live in families or single parent where they don't know what to believe, and there's no planning because they never saw it had it had a logic and a sense to it, and a feedback loop that was positive. So, you know, it's like, so my advice is I think that trying to address some of the social ills, I think the society is going to start recognizing people who do that and potentially reward people and do business models, private public partnerships. Because if we can, if we can help these young kids have more of a better chance and better fit in and better life, because if they don't, we're not going to live in the country we want to live in. So that's
one final comment from Matt Christensen from Allianz. He's in Nairobi now, saying this week he's looking at VCs and private equity funds and direct deals. And he says there's also a massive infrastructure project happening here that looks to potentially transform transport. The consensus from private sector has been that Chinese financing has been focused on large-scale infrastructure, but not on SME and local businesses. That has remained more the area of the West foundations, DFIs, and some institutional investors. All this to say, it would appear that China remains focused on government financing, but not private sector from an impact perspective. Could you comment on that?
Well, no, I agree. I think that, the Chinese, the policy, the truth is their Belt and Road Initiative, I'm happy they kind of did it, but I kind of also, they're going to lose a lot of money, and they are losing a lot of money. And actually, Sintao, we actually worked with the China-Kenya Business Association to try to get more community involvement types of issues. But traditionally, the Chinese have been a little more transactional, and for them to understand and consult with the community and do this and that, it doesn't come out of the command and control model. So what I'm saying is that I think, there's a terrific opportunity to work in medium and small enterprises because I just don't see the Chinese companies doing that as much. And you have the DFIs. I mean, some people say there are too many NGOs in Kenya. I don't have an opinion on that. I was involved in Grameen Foundation and microfinance and supporting that, and that was pretty good. But I agree with him. And also, I don't think the Chinese have it in their staff to go into the SME level. And yet SMEs are really, IFC, others have SME programs, and we've invested in venture funds in Africa, and I think it's an undiscovered opportunity, SMEs in Africa, and you have some other infrastructure issues with regard to African investments, but. I think it's wonderful to help African entrepreneurs, and I'm a big into entrepreneurship. I was, invited to go to Bangladesh to see this guy who was helping these women, in the 80s, and I said to him, "This is amazing work. I love this. Why don't you tell the world more about it?" And he said, "Well, we don't have any money." I said, "Join Calvert World Values Fund Board, and we'll fly you over." And so within a year, he was late because he was at the White House and whatever. And then some years later, he won the Nobel Peace Prize for the whole microfinance area. And that's another example of going a little out of your way to say, hey, how about join our, maybe some good stuff can happen out of this. And sure, it costs us some money to fly and do this and that. But I'll talk about leverage and microfinance becoming a phenomenon of its time. So, yes, I think SME is actually where the financial opportunities are in Africa. Bigger opportunities. You get political concerns and different problems there. So I would support that, and that means networks and that kind of thing in Africa. Mm-hmm.
We're coming to the end of the hour, and I'm conscious of your time. What can this audience that's watching live now or taped do to help you? You've been so generous with everybody else.
I feel so. Robert, I could have put all this energy in about investments, meaning and purpose, and the world may not have gone this way, and that the world is recognizing that is enough. I'm good. I do think that wellness and a little bit this leveraging your own value proposition. I also think this common prosperity theme actually. I like it. I mean, I've always liked more than compliance, being more proactive in our impact investments. And, part of the impact investing movement, one of the problems is the marketing people want to sell. How would you like to save the world and make a lot of money?
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's what the marketing. Well, it doesn't work like that exactly. It's going out of your way. It's not about buying a windmill off a Bloomberg tear sheet. It's about kind of advancing around some social issue, use some innovation. Potentially, there's no IP, and okay, you're going to lose some money, or even you're going to lose some money just because it's a great thing to do, but people won't understand it until later. We were one of the first investors in Illumin, which had to do with giving student loans where you paid back based on your income. Right. And because they existed, and we helped fund, and it actually worked out. But eventually this model then was adopted by the Clinton administration, and now there are billions of student loans made, which wouldn't have been made if you didn't create a model, let's show that it can be done. And people like Calvert and others put up some money. It was pretty iffy whether we're going to make any money, but it was only a few $100,000 from us and whatever. The point is that, this isn't about being some smart HBS investment banker and making this is leading with the heart and a certain amount of compassion. Let's hope you don't do idiot compassion. I've certainly done that a time or two. I think that's where the opportunities are in the world, are these real social needs. And that's where the major and healthcare in Africa and others. So I feel very supported, Robert, just by being able to have this conversation that God knows 30 years ago if I would have thought this could be possible. But it's just, and thank you for the people who showed up and listened, and excuse me for my rants, but it's just a pleasure of being here. Thank you.
No, do what Walt Whitman said, shout your barbaric yawp over the rooftops of the world. I just want to take a group selfie with everyone. Just wave to the camera, and it'll collate all of these photos together, and then I'll send you a card. I'll also send you the link of for the replay. It'll probably take an hour or so for that. I have to thank a lot of people who worked on this. I want to thank our entire production crew for making this webinar possible. Sam, our producer, crypto genius and ramen critic, Ricky, my absolute better half with no filter, Xi Jinping, our head of transparency and integrity, Donald Trump, our gender diversity lead and dog whisperer, Vladimir Putin, our head of conflict resolution, Jeff Bezos, our phallic symbol designer and space explorer, Richard Branson, a low-carbon transportation genius, and Elon Musk, our humility coach. Wayne, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Thank you all. And the replay will be sent out, or the link to the replay will be sent out in a few hours. It has to process. Wayne, if we ever can do anything for you, please don't hesitate to ask. You have a big hug from Ricky. It's her birthday today. So she said, say hi to Wayne, especially my definitely better half. Thank you all very, very much. And I hope to see you next week. Wayne, you stay safe and keep doing what you're doing. I really like it. And I might have something actually quite cool for your wellness story. Stay well.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Yeah, you can just